Hello, this is Taureor, and welcome back to Europa Universalis IV Tutorials. In this episode, episode 2, we will talk about the user interface and map modes. And before we begin, I would like to mention one thing that I forgot about in the last episode. It is this checkbox here, Random New World. What it does is it takes the geography of the Americas and not the provinces and countries, just the terrain, and it randomizes it. So when you explore it as a European, you will not know where to look. So yeah, that's an interesting feature, mostly for multiplayer. But be warned that the game favors making many small continents over few large ones. So you might end up with 5 or 6 continents of the size of 1/3 of South America, for example. Okay, so with that covered, we will get into game. I will keep this feature enabled, and at the end of this tutorial I will show what random world was generated. We will start as France, which is considered to be one of the easiest, strongest nations. The loading of the game will take a while, because I'm not running a super powerful PC, and because the game has to generate the new world randomly, as opposed to a regular game where it just loads it. And why France? Well, two basic reasons. One is that they start at war, so we can show off the war interface as well. And the second is that they start having vassals. So subjects management is also important. Alright, so this is the primary map mode. This is the political map. This is a primary map mode for me, but for other players it might be different. But I think most people play on the political map mode. Alright, so let's start with the basic concept. This white area here is terra incognita. This means that you haven't explored those lands, you don't know what lies beyond. It can be removed using explorers or conquistadors, or it can just dissipate on its own in time. When, for example, Portugal explores the whole world, you will slowly hear about new lands, and terra incognita will slowly disappear. But if you're first, you get advantages. Right, so that was terra incognita. Now fog of war. Notice that most of the provinces in Europe are dark. This is the fog of war. If you played any strategy games, you probably know what it means. It is here to mask the movement of enemy troops, because, for instance, as France, we know the geography of Spain, we know where everything is, but we don't know where their troops are. So what we can see are our own provinces, all the provinces adjacent to our provinces, also the provinces of our allies and vassals. For example, maybe let's take Foix, I think that's how it's pronounced. They are our vassal. So we can see their province, and we can also see the provinces next. Sorry, this is next to ours, but Pyreneo, for example, is next to our vassal province, and we can still see it. We can also see what's happening in the sea zones adjacent to our provinces, and if we had a ship, for example, here, let's move our ships here. I will unpause the game for a while, improve the speed. Now we can see the sea zones adjacent to the sea zone we have our troops in, and also the coastal provinces. Alright, so, interface. There are 3 major parts of the interface: left top, and right bottom. But what it represents? Well, the top left part of the user interface represents the basic statistics of our nation, and also all the alerts and the main menu. So let's start with the basic statistics. This is our treasury. It means how much money we have, basically, but when we mouse over it in the tooltip you can see your income and expenses. This is a very useful thing. Also, you can see the little green plus. It means that we are making a profit. Next, manpower. This will be covered more in the military tutorial, but it basically means the number of people we have that are ready for military training. So it influences how big armies we can build, or how well our reinforcements for the armies we already have will do. Then stability. It goes from -3 to +3, and it influences all the things in our country: revolt risk, income, and such. It's good to have it high. Prestige, -100 to +100. Very important for relations with other countries, especially if you want to install your ruler on their throne. Legitimacy, the right to rule of your king, influences the internal matters of the country quite significantly. And finally, power projection. This is a relatively new feature. It shows how good you are in meddling in other people's business, and you can gain it. It goes up to 100. You can gain it by, for example, fighting your rivals, insulting them, blockading their ports, embargoing them, and so on and so forth. It's not that crucial, but if you manage to get over 50 power projection, you will get more monarch points. Monarch points will be covered in the separate tutorial, but for now you need to know that they are very, very important. Okay, so yeah, monarch points. Administrative, diplomatic, and military. They are quite intuitive. Administrative power is used for administrative technology and internal matters of the country. Diplomatic is used for external matters. So, for example, diplomatic actions like annexing your vassals. And military power is used for generals and improving your military technology. Also for subduing rebels. Okay, and here are your agents. The merchant, used to get money from trade. The colonist, you need special ideas to get them, but the colonists are used to colonize, of course, land that is nobody's. As France, we can't really see any uncolonized land, but I will disable the fog of war later, so we can see that. Military power, oh sorry, we talked about diplomat. Diplomat is the agent that you send to other countries to perform diplomatic actions, but why do we have two? What does it matter? Well, if you send a diplomat, for example, if we send a diplomat to Spain, it will take him some time to carry out the mission, and so we can only be performing 2 missions at a time, and then we have to wait for our diplomat to return. You can get more diplomats, and then you can perform multiple diplomatic missions at the same time. It's quite intuitive when you get into the game. Finally, missionary, used for converting provinces to your religion. Unless you are super tolerant, having all the provinces you have being your religion is important because it stabilizes your country and gives you less revolt risk in those provinces. Alright, now below here we have the alerts. There are very many types, and we will basically go over them when we encounter them in game. I will maybe make a tutorial in-game series as well, where we will play a simple nation like France and explain everything we're doing. But for now, this is. Country is at war. Quite obvious, we are at war. You have a free advisor slot. Well, advisors are men that we can hire. They cost us a lot of money, but they improve our power points and give some other bonuses. You can have one for each type of monarch points: administrative, diplomatic, and military. Disputed succession. This is a little bit more complicated and will be covered in a separate tutorial. Basically what it means is if a country that we have a royal marriage with has no heir, there is a way to be the king of both nations. So, for example, as Poland historically has a personal union, not at the moment, but Poland historically had a personal union over Lithuania. It means that Polish king ruled both nations, and they later combined. It's a very powerful diplomatic thing, and this alert shows you which countries don't have an heir or have a weak heir. Okay, missions. We will get to that in a moment, and too many diplomatic relations. This will be covered in the diplomacy tutorial. Basically, you cannot conduct diplomacy effectively with too many nations at once. There is a limit. Alright, and here there are 2 big buttons that are quite important. Right, I clicked on the province. What you can see in the lower left corner is the province view, which shows the statistics of a province. This is quite intuitive, and when you get into the game you will learn it easily. Okay, now let's focus on this big button. This is the main menu, basically. Not the main menu out of game, but the in-game menu. I'm not sure how to describe it otherwise. And there are many tabs in it. I will not go over the exact details of each tab. We will just, because then the tutorial will take over an hour, and you would be bored probably. Let's just do a quick overview. So this is about our government type, our governing person, our king, duke, or whatever. It depends on the type of government we have. And our heir. Those numbers are his military, diplomatic, and administrative skills. They go from 0 to 6. The more, the better. This here is our culture. For example, Poland will have Polish culture, England will have English culture, and so on. Yeah, it's quite important, but later on, not at the beginning of the game. Okay, and advisors here. When you click those, you can hire an advisor. Then they go from +1 to +3, and this is the bonus that you get to your monarch points, which we will cover in a separate tutorial. Also, each of them gives a separate bonus. For example, prestige, lower stability cost, or lower inflation. But notice that with higher power, also the cost is increased. So it's a quadratic increase. So right, this is 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared. It's at the beginning of the game. Later on it becomes even greater. Okay, so you can basically ruin your country's economy if you hire a too high level advisor. Right, and those here, this is added with I think Respublica expansion. This is the focus of a country. So for example, we are now focused on diplomatic. If we click administrative, all the other aspects of the country suffer a bit, but we are better at administrating. I think that's quite clear. And this button here lets us change the government, but you usually have to fulfill some requirements, like a technology level. Diplomacy. Diplomacy screen lets you see your relations with other countries. For example, those little guys here are our vassals. Here you see enemies, rivals, and so on. This will become clearer in the diplomatic tutorial. And here you can see the relations between you and other countries. And if you click on another country with this tab open, you get the diplomatic tab for them. So you can see, for example, who Burgundy is allied with. You also get the actions. So for example, relations, improve relations. If I click that, one of our diplomats is sent to Burgundy to improve relations. You can now stop improving relations and he is coming back. You can see it will take him 2 days. That's what I was talking about with the limit of diplomats that can act at the same time, and this time of return depends on how far away the country you send them to is. Alright. And that's their technology group, but we will cover that later. Okay. Technology levels, stability, prestige, ideas, relations with us, strengths of their king. Let's go on. Economy. Well, basically here you can see different sources of income of your country, and here you can see your expenses. You can change your expenses. For example, you can adjust the military maintenance. Your units will have lower morale, but will cost less. Loans, self-explanatory, war taxes. Spend some military power to get money, basically. Okay, trade. This is a trade overview. It shows your bonuses and penalties, also the trade nodes. This again will be covered in a separate tutorial because trade is a very complex subject, but in this window here you can see how much money you are earning from trade. And trade can be a very good source of income, especially for countries that focus on it, like for example Portugal. Technology. There are 3 technologies, just like there are 3 types of monarch points. You have to spend points to increase your technology. Administrative, better at administering your country. Diplomatic, better at trade and diplomacy. Military, better at war, basically. So it's pretty self-explanatory. The exact things each level technology gives are listed here. And the cost of the technology levels depends on the time of the game, which can be seen here on the year, and also on the technology levels of your neighbors. So if you are backward and everybody else has higher technology, you have a little less monarch points. Sorry, you have to pay a little less monarch points for that because you can learn from your neighbors a bit. Ideas. Well, they are basically a way to customize your nation. For example, you can choose to be more diplomatic, or more offensive, or more innovative, and so on. Well, offensive in the military sense, of course. Also will be covered in the technology tutorial. This tab is missions and decisions. You can take missions that require you to do certain things, and that will give you some benefits. So first you have to choose a mission, then you fulfill the requirements and you get a benefit. Missions can be cancelled and others can be chosen. And those here are the decisions. If you, for example, let's say, which one should we introduce? Church taxes. If you are not Catholic, or you have the modifier Statute of Restraints of Appeals, which basically means that the king is more important than the Pope, and you have a theologian, you can introduce church taxes. And this is the benefits and penalties you will get from that. And that's it. If you click those, you won't get a notification if you can pass the decision. Basically a pop-up will appear here, similar to that one. No mission selected, it will look very similar. Okay, stability. This is a very important tab. War exhaustion. How war weary is your population? This increases and decreases your income, increases your revolt risk, and so on. This goes up. If it goes over 10, you are in trouble. Stability, I think we covered that a bit. Each positive level gives benefits, if each negative level gives penalties, and they are cumulative. Expansion, let's not worry about it at the moment. And here you can see all the rebels that are active in your country. And this screen allows you to, for example, spend military power to get rid of the rebels, or see when and where they will revolt, approximately. Next, religion tab. Here, this is your religion. There are very many religions in the game, and each is a little bit different. You are Catholic, so you can convert to Protestant or Reformed, but the Protestant Reformation hasn't happened yet. And these are your tolerances. Basically, tolerance reduces revolt risk in the province with said religion. So in our Catholic provinces we have -5 revolt risk. In our heretics, so other Catholics, meaning Orthodox, Protestant and Reformed, we get -2, and heathens, meaning, for example, various schools of Islam or Buddhism and such, we will get the same -2. Yes. So this is reversely added to revolt risk, so this is -5 revolt risk, this is +2 revolt risk. You can send missionaries to convert your provinces to your religion if you want to. Defender of the Faith is a little bit more advanced feature that we will cover later. And so is the Papacy view. You can open it if you are Catholic from this little button here. Basically, you can spend your influence with the Pope to install your cardinals as the Pope, or to get some other benefits. Okay, military tab. Types of units you have available. If you acquire more military technologies, you can change the units. As you can see, they are stronger, they have more pips. That basically means they're stronger. We'll get more into that later. And your modifiers to combat. Also, those are global modifiers: army, tradition, land morale, force limit, and so on. These are global statistics, pretty useful in the military. And here you can see your generals. Attaching a general to an army is very important if it's a major army that will be in battles. Also, generals cost monarch points. You see, 2 out of 1. We can have 1 free general, and each over that limit will cost us 1 military power a month. Okay, and here you can recruit generals, conquistadors, admirals, explorers, and you can also convert your king or into a general. It is a very useful feature, because if you want to get rid of your king, you make him a general and send him into battle. And finally, the subjects tab. It details all your subjects, meaning your vassals, your marches, your personal union members, and your colonial nations. It basically shows how much they like you, how much they want to break free from you, and how much money you get from them. And various modifiers. You can also give them orders. Not specific orders, but you can, for example, order them to be aggressive and attack the enemies. Okay, that's for this main menu. This is the most important menu in the game. And if you understood what I said here, you basically know all the basics of the interface. Again, production interface is another thing that is very important. It is used for recruiting military units, for building ships, and it shows you where you can do it. For building buildings, we can't really build any buildings at the moment because all of them require technology. And you have some filters here, so you can, for example, enable or disable various types of buildings because they cost monarch points as well. Make core. If you have some provinces that are not your cores, you can core them and have an overview from this tab. Again, the same with religion, the provinces that are not of your religion. Local autonomy. Local autonomy is a feature that lets you give people more freedom, so that they won't want to revolt, but in return for that you get less manpower and less money from them. Very useful, very intuitive. We'll get back to that. And finally, culture. You can spend a lot of diplomatic power to change a province to your culture, to make your culture dominant. So this is the production interface. Okay, bear with me, we have covered all the basics. All the rest is just icing on the cake. So here is the time. This is the current date, and this is our position in score and how many points we get. And here you can adjust the speed of the game. Basically, speed 5 will make the game run as fast as your computer can handle it, and the slower speeds are predefined. And this button here lets you pause and unpause the game. You can always also do it with the space key. Okay, outliner is the little box over here, and you can modify what is displayed here, for example, provinces, and so on. It's a very useful feature. You can, for example, show you what your diplomats are doing. He is free, and he is returning from Burgundy, from improving relations. You can see hostile sieges here, and so on. It's really very useful and customizable. So I always play with this on, but you can hide it if you're not using it. Okay, here we have notifications. The notifications show what happened in other countries. You can set them up, for example, to appear as pop-ups. I usually prefer to have them here, unless they're very important. And you can adjust that with this button here. And this is message filter settings. So which countries do you want to hear about? And if you don't know what you're doing, just click best guess. This is a very good choice usually. And then you can add some countries. For example, we want to know what's happening in Denmark. Then we click Denmark. We don't care about the Papal State. We click the Papal State off. Very intuitive. And you will get the messages from those countries here. And you can check what's happening if they get a new king, for example. Okay, we're getting to the maps, but we'll get back to that in a moment. Now, okay, this is the locking feature for. Yeah, see, we cannot. Oh, never mind. That's too much talking. War interface. This is the war we are at. On the left, you can see your allies and you, and on the right, you can see your enemy. Here we can see how many troops we have in total, and you can see what they have. And this is war enthusiasm. This is used for determining if your allies want to leave you. War exhaustion, we talked about that. Stability and blockades. If you have your ports blockaded by enemy ships, you will lose income. And this is England, so our enemy. Right, our ships, their ships. This is a war score, and you mouse over it, you can see if you gain or lose war score. Basically, war score is earned by winning battles, occupying enemy provinces and such. We will cover that in more detail in the military tutorial. And the list of battles over there. Alright, and if you want to peace out, you can click this button here. And it takes you straight to the peace deal. You can find it by clicking the country in question and clicking Sue for Peace, and that's the same thing. Alright, so that was the war interface. We also have the Papacy and the Holy Roman Empire view, but they are unique to the Catholics and to the center of Europe, the German states. So we won't really be talking about it now. It's enough that you know where to look. It's over here. And now the last thing we have to cover is this box in here. There are some important things that can be found. For example, the log shows you exactly what's happening. I usually play with that closed, but well, maybe you have a different preference. And map modes. On the top here you can see the map modes selected by the player. The default 6 map modes. I play with those 6, but you can change it by clicking this arrow, and you have all the map modes selectable now. And for example, we want to get rid of the coalition map mode and replace it with terrain map mode. We click it with the right mouse button, and then we click the desired map mode with the right mouse button again. Pretty intuitive. Okay, so let's go over the map modes quickly. First, terrain map modes. Map mode, it shows what kind of terrain you can encounter where. For example, those are mountains. And when you mouse over it, you can see what kind of terrain that is. This is important basically for military operations because it is easier to attack someone who is in a plain field than to attack someone who's hiding in the mountains. And it is also a pretty nice map, just a regular physical map. Next, political map mode, it shows which countries are where, and this is the most useful map, at least for me. Next, trade map mode. It shows the flow of trade goods and the incomes associated with that. We will cover it with more, we will cover it in more detail in the trade tutorial, but it basically shows what your merchants are doing. For example, our merchant here is transferring trade power to our capital, and so is this one. And then we automatically collect from trade here, so we earn money. This map mode is used to determine what the cash flow is, from where the goods go where, and how to get more money. Imperial Map Mode. This is the Holy Roman Empire. This is a political construct that is a remnant of what was going on in the medieval times. Basically, it is a collection of German states ruled by the emperor, who is currently Austria. The emperor is elected from amongst them when the previous emperor dies, and he has some authority, but the authority is pretty loose. Okay, and this map mode just lets you see which provinces, which countries are in the empire. Religion map mode. Pretty self-explanatory. Sunni, Catholic, Orthodox. What is interesting are those lines here. That means that Lithuania, the owner of this land, is Catholic, but those provinces are actually Orthodox. So Lithuania has to either be very tolerant or use their missionaries to convert those provinces to Catholicism, or convert to Orthodox themselves. So yeah, this map mode is useful for determining which provinces you have to convert to your religion, for example. Next, diplomatic map mode. Okay, we have selected Austria, let's get back to ourselves. Oh yeah, because if you select other countries, the map changes with respect to their situation. Let's select ourselves. As we can see, we are allied with those countries here, the dark green. We have claims on those lands that are striped. Those guys here are our vassals, and England is our enemy. We are at war. And we have no diplomatic relationships with anyone else. Next, just 3 more rows. Let's go a little bit quicker. Opinion map mode. Who likes us, who doesn't? Green is good, red is bad. And you can change that for other countries as well. Okay, next. Coalition. Coalitions are essentially alliances not with someone but against someone. If you're the bad boy of Europe and you're conquering everywhere, everyone everywhere, the other countries will soon realize that and form an alliance against you. So if you attack any of them, everyone will fight you. Region map mode. Not very useful. You can see in the tooltips, for example here, French region, Gallia, Europe. This is important for colonial nations and for some events like if the King of Burgundy dies, we will get all his other provinces in the French region. For example here, French region, Low Countries. So we wouldn't get that province, but we would get that province. Okay, let's go on. Let's click that so this doesn't disappear. Culture map mode. What cultures are present? And if you click one province, you see all the cultures of this culture group. So basically you are more tolerant of the cultures in your culture group. So for example, those are the Germans, the Italians, and so on. Unrest. So which of your provinces want to rebel against you? Red is bad. Enough said. Colonial map mode. We can't really... Okay, let's disable Terra Incognita. I will open the console. Don't do that, it's cheating. And it spoils the game unless you need to set something up. Okay, we have disabled Terra Incognita. We can see all the world. See, this is the random new world. This is the feature I was talking about earlier. And as you can see, there are many small continents. And they are red. Why are they red in colonial map mode? Well, because this is colonizable land, but we cannot reach it. We are too far. Portugal can, they have provinces here. Yeah, so that's it. Next, technology. Green is good, red is bad. Who is more technologically advanced? Supply limit. Well, if you, for example, put your army in a desert, they will have nothing to eat and they will die. Green means more. And if you select an army, green means the region that has enough supply for them. Let's split the army. You see, now this has increased. All those provinces can supply 14,000 troops. And all those provinces can supply 7,000 troops. And all of those provinces can supply 3,000 troops, and so on. Okay, next, buildings map mode. Provinces which have buildings. And this province, Ile-de-France, looks differently. Why? Well, because it has a university. It has one more building than the rest. Actually two, because it also has a better fort. This can be used when you're building. Next, player map mode. Which lands are controlled by the player? For example, if it was a multiplayer game, all other players' lands would be highlighted in different colors. Accepted culture. We'll cover that later, but it basically means which lands have our culture and which lands have culture that we like. Let's choose... oh no, we can't choose anyone else at the moment. If it's red, it's bad. Winter, where the winter is harsh and where it isn't. It's important for unit attrition, so your forces dying because of the cold. Climate, important for colonization and the impact of the time of year. Colonial regions. So you can see those are different colonial regions. What it means is basically if you have enough colonies in one colonial region, they will form a colonial nation, which is a subject nation. But if you have some colonies here and some here, those will form one colonial nation, and those will form another one. Good. Trade company region. This is basically the same, but for trade companies. Trade companies are... You basically don't govern the land yourself, you give it to a trade company that is supposed to bring you profits. And that's basically that. Trade goods map mode. What is produced in what province? I basically use this map mode only for finding gold mines. For example, this is a gold mine, and if we click it, we can see all the other gold mines in the world. And those are very rich provinces that we want to conquer. Normally. They also incur inflation, but that's not that important. Local autonomy, we talked about local autonomy later. Oh yeah, I had Castile selected, then I changed the map mode, so it shows us Castile. Let's select ourselves, change the map mode again, it shows us. You can increase or lower the local autonomy, that's here. And if it's high, it will be red on the map. Fort level, the greener the province, the stronger the fort. For example, the knights here have a very strong fort. Constantinople has a relatively strong fort, those are regular, and those in Africa are very weak. This is more important later in the game when enough technology becomes available to build up forts. Simple terrain. Quite useful map for the beginner players. It shows you very simply what kinds of terrain are located where. And this is important because you don't want to attack someone who is hiding in the mountains, for example, or in the hills or the mountains, for example. But attacking someone in the forest is not that bad, and attacking someone in plains or fields is pretty alright. Okay, next. Sphere of influence. Our friends and enemies, basically. Mostly our enemies. So, England we are at war with. England is both our rival and enemy. Burgundy is our rival. Or, sorry, we are their rival. They are enemy. Austria is our enemy. It shows your enemies. Not that useful in my opinion, because you usually tend to remember who your enemies are. Economical map mode. Provinces that are green bring you more cash. That's it. Plain and simple. Alright, so we have covered all our map modes. Let's close this. And this is the minimap. So you can just click to where you want to be transported. And this is basically all of the basics of the user interface. Let's have a quick look on the province mode again. You can click this tab to see the buildings here. I think I talked about it for a minute. And you can also build from this interface or from the building production interface. And here you have those little buttons that let you build units exactly in that province, but it's much more convenient to use the production interface for that. Yeah, there's much more information here, but let's not go over it in detail. You can just see what it is. And rule number 1 of Europa Universalis: always read the tooltip. There is a lot of information in the tooltips. For example, see? A river flows between this province and Gascon. It means that if I attack from Gascon, I will get a river crossing penalty. And this button here shows you who owned the province. It's important sometimes. Oh yeah, so we can build a ship from this interface as well. It's a very well optimized game in terms of interface. It can always be better, but it's pretty damn good. Okay, so I think we have covered everything. Oh no, the ledger here. So menu, that's the main menu, yes, self-explanatory. Ledger is a very important tool for the min-maxer player. So basically, you can see all the numbers here. Let's choose military, for example, armies, and find our enemy England. Or let's see Castile. Okay, Castile is okay, they are our neighbor. You can see exactly how much infantry, how much cavalry, how much manpower, total forces and force limit they have. And this can be disabled in multiplayer, but basically this lets you assess many things in the game. You can see their income, you can see who likes whom, and so on. So, very useful feature, but for the more advanced player. History, this is the brief history of your nation, generated based on what you did in the game. Triggered modifiers. This shows you... Okay, let's take subjugation of papacy. If you are Catholic and you you vassalize the papal state, you will get a negative modifier. We are Catholic, but we haven't conquered the papal state. You can use this view to search for the useful modifiers that you want to get, or avoid the ones you don't want to get. Find province. Useful if you get a pop-up, for example, there are rebels in that and that province, but you don't know where it is and you have 500 provinces. So example, let's say we have conquered a Polish province of Poznań and we don't know where it is, and something is happening there. You get a pop-up, there are rebels, but you can't really find it. So you just write here, Poz. There are 2 provinces that begin with this this string, so we just click on the one we are interested in and it brings us to it. Very important. Sorry, maybe not very important, very useful. And those buttons over here are zoom in, zoom out, pretty obvious, but you can also use your keyboard or your mouse wheel. Alright, we've covered everything. So, thanks for watching. I'm glad you stuck this far with me, because I know this is not very entertaining, but if you have any doubts about the interface, you can always refer to this tutorial. And in the next video, in the next few videos, we will cover the essentials of governing a nation, the internal matters, the diplomacy, and warfare. So, thank you very much for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time, bye bye!